Thank you all for coming out to our LiveWire for this week. Before we get started, we just want to take a moment real quick and introduce ourselves. My name is Brett. I'm a technical success manager with SignalWire. Been here for about 7 or 8 months. And my job is wholly focused around talking with our customers as they get up to speed with SignalWire and guiding them in the right direction as they build out their applications. And here presenting with me today is Daniele.
I am Daniele, and at SignalWire, I'm Developer Relations Manager. As Brett was saying in a few words, I take care, for example, about the technical documentation of the products that we release. And I make sure that the documentation is easy to read, easy to understand for the developers, and that the process that leads to this documentation is compatible with our quality standards. Brett.
Awesome. So let's go over an agenda real quick. We're going to take a few moments to introduce yourselves to the LiveWire concept overall, and then we're going to go into a general bird's eye view of the video API. As soon as we get through the kind of more conceptual stuff, I'll pass the reins on over to Daniela for the actual deep dive in the workshop. I'm sure you know the reason you guys are all here today. At the end, we do ask you stick around. We will be completing a quick survey. Lets us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and how we can make this more engaging and entertaining and informative in the future. And then if you all have questions afterwards, we'll have a Q&A session where we're happy to answer any and all questions going on. But let's talk about LiveWires. We do this every once in a while where it's a video series where we talk about different SignalWire technologies out there overall and everything that you can accomplish with it. Each LiveWire covers a different use case that can be managed with our APIs. And this LiveWire specifically is a slightly different format than what we've done before. Before we get started, it is important to note that after this presentation is all done, the video application you will have will require a SignalWire space, a project ID, and an API token. If you need to know where to go for that, at the end of this presentation, the slide deck that I am using will be made available to you, and there's a link in the appendix to be able to obtain all that. Let's talk about some housekeeping stuff real quick. I mentioned it a little bit about 20 minutes ago, but we will be working in Code Sandbox. There will be links to this application that you'll be working on in the chat itself. As always, if you have questions, we want to know about it. During the actual seminar itself, if you have questions, you can post questions in the chat itself. We have people on standby ready to answer them as they come along. If you don't get the application to run, please don't worry about it. We're all developers here. Very rarely does something run the first time you type it out. So we'll be sending you a final repo on GitHub at the end of the workshop with the final product itself. And for the purposes of Code Sandbox, we will be using some API credentials that we provide. Those will be good for about a week. And at the end of the week, we're going to have to refresh those for security purposes. And if you want to continue to use the application, you would then need to just pretty much replace those credentials with your own API credentials that I talked about in the previous slide. And lastly, keep an eye in the chat. For those of you that might not be able to type as fast as we may go, we will have code snippets in the form of GitHub gists that you can essentially copy and paste at the end if you miss something. So keep an eye out in the chat there. Let's talk about Video API. Video API and video conferencing has made huge waves in the telecom industry over the past couple of years, due to a multitude of different reasons. Perhaps the most common reason it is used is for internal company meetings and company interviews on the HR end. So things of along the nature of direct Zoom, Google Hangout replacements, things of that nature itself, probably the most common use cases we get. But there are a lot of other options out there for how you could possibly use an application like this. Live video estimates for repair companies and junk removal, trash and garbage, things of that nature. Broadcasted events like trivia, karaoke, DJs that have to host an event in this kind of remote pandemic world that we are currently living in. Customer service and troubleshooting. I love using the example of IT and AV companies where it's a lot easier to troubleshoot a problem if the technician can see what the customer is seeing. And so this would cut back on a lot of time, energy, and money for both the customer and the company itself if the technician can quite literally, via video application, see what the customer is seeing. And then live product demonstrations for salespeople out there, for car dealerships and things of that nature, doctors' offices for telehealth, or even providing their own telehealth service for their small family-run and operated practice. And then let's not forget that a lot of companies out there are looking to purchase similar applications to Zoom, or better or superior products to Zoom. And this is essentially what we're providing you today. So even if you don't have an application for the application, your customers might. Just giving you a little heads up there. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. How is our video API and the application that we can build with it different from Zoom? And the first thing I'm going to point out is that our video API is powered by a single cloud rendered connection to and from each endpoint. Without getting into the nitty-gritty of what this means, it means that we are able to perform a lot better in lower bandwidth scenarios. So talking on behalf of our rural customers where high-speed internet and broadband is not necessarily a thing, all the way down to some other places where 5G probably hasn't been implemented yet. And whatever the case, it enables the video platform that we are building right now to be functional even in some very, very remote or kind of low bandwidth areas. And then, of course, it's a video API. The whole point of video API is to allow the product to be customizable and, I guess, modular in a sense to the business's specific use case. And that is what we are enabling you to do here. So this product can be customizable in terms of layouts and transitions with pre-produced audio and video content, controllable screen sizes, and it is constantly getting better. But let's talk about some of the technical stuff real quick. The video API itself and the video application we'll be building has really three main aspects to it. There is the client side, or I will kind of refer to it as the front end. There is the server side, or the back end, and then there's SignalWire servers. These servers are essentially what generates the video application itself, and you can communicate to it via the API product. On the server side and the back end, all it is just a collection of standard REST endpoints used to create and manage the rooms. You can actually configure the server-side code based in whatever server-side language you want. So PHP, Python, JavaScript, React, even now, all of this stuff is available. For the SignalWire Video API to work, you must create a room before you link a call. Those are created and managed and deleted through our REST API. Think of it like any other meeting you've ever been in. If you don't set a location or a room to meet in, how are you supposed to meet? And then to authorize the users, you will need a JSON web token or a JWT. In each JWT are the explicit permissions that enables the application to understand what that specific user is supposed to do. And then on the front end, or the client side, this is done primarily through our JavaScript SDK. And this allows you to build a better video experience with a standard-based process around it. It'll transform the browser into a real-time video communication platform that connects to other browsers, and it communicates through the use of those JWTs to connect to the backend and authenticate all the users itself. And then on the front end is where you define the methods and implement interactivity, such as mute and unmute camera, mute and unmute self, screen share, that kind of stuff. But I will let Daniele talk about that stuff himself and hand the reins over to him for the actual workshop.
Thanks, Brett. So let's get started. First, I'd like to show you what we are actually going to build. So you see here an application. For example, I can enter my name and a room, let's say SignalWire. We join the room and we are welcomed with this screen. So this is what we are going to build. Right now, we have an application that builds this UI, but there is just the UI. So this button, for example, doesn't work. And we are going today to write the code to connect this user interface to the SignalWire APIs, to the SignalWire SDK. Okay. We have built the UI for you because it's not the interesting part. So we'll just focus on the core video functionalities. Okay. So this UI, by the way, is written in React, but you don't have to know React to follow along this hands-on tutorial. And as Brett was saying, we are using Code Sandbox. This is just useful to see in real time the changes in our code and to not need to install an extra IDE on your systems. Okay. So as Brett was saying, to build an application using SignalWire APIs, we need to write two components. We have a client component, for example, the one running on the browser, and we have to write a small server which will communicate with SignalWire. Okay, so just to show you a picture again, we have a client application here on the right. We have your server here in the middle, and we have SignalWire servers on the left. So when you register with SignalWire, you get an API token. And this API token basically gives you admin access to all the video functionalities. So you cannot expose that in the client. What you do, you use your server as a kind of a proxy to interact with SignalWire from the client. Okay, so what we are going to do now, we are going to write this server here in the middle. I have here some code. For now, since this is quite simple, don't worry, I will write this, but be ready because later on we're going to write together the front end to connect with SignalWire APIs. Okay, so we said that we need to obtain an API token from SignalWire. We use this API token to use the REST APIs, basically. The client, what the client needs is a different token, which is called a room token, which you can think of it as a key to access a given room for a given user. Okay, so what we are going to do now is writing the code that basically allows the client to ask our server for a room token. Okay, we're using here a Node.js server. We have an endpoint here, get token. So when the client makes a post request to this token, to this endpoint here, he will receive a room token for a given username and for a given room. How do we obtain the room token? We can make a request to SignalWire using the REST APIs of SignalWire to get this token. So I'll show you how to do this. Let's say we wanted the token inside this variable. We need to do a post request to SignalWire. So we use Axios for that. There's a useful library for network requests. Where do we make a request? So to this endpoint here. This endpoint is a URL that you get when you register to SignalWire, which basically allows us to obtain a room token. So let's make this network request endpoint, and we must pass some parameters to this request. We will pass 3 parameters. We will pass the username. This is the name that the client sent us in the outer request here. Then we need to pass the name of the room that we want to join. And we can pass a list of permissions. This is just an array of strings. I'll show you what it looks like. So it's something like this, okay? It's just basically a list of capabilities that this user should have within the room. Okay, let's go back. And then we need some authentication, of course, with SignalWire. And this authentication is basically your, let's go at the top, your project ID and API key that you get from your SignalWire space when you register. Okay, so this is an Axios response. So we need to extract the token from the envelope. So we do it like this, token.data. And then what we can do, well, yeah, you see SignalWire returns a token like this. That's why we take the token field inside the response. And then we can send back this token to the client. So we return press.json. We give it back to the client as a JSON object. Okay, this is really all you need to build this proxy server that we talked about. What we are going to see now is the interesting part, so the front end. You will receive a link to this to this page in the chat. Okay, so you can open this link and look what you should be seeing what I am seeing. Okay. During this presentation, we will, don't worry if you cannot follow along, because we will send you in the chat some gists with the code that I will be writing. So even if you don't write with me, you can still copy paste this code into the code. Also, the questions, you can ask questions in the chat. And so let's get started. First thing, we have to fork this so that you can save your changes. You should find a button fork here at the top, or if you don't see it, you can go at the left menu, file, and then fork sandbox. So what do we have here? Look at the left-hand side. You see a list of files. What we're interested in are basically two files. One is inside the src pages incall.js. This is the first file we're interested in. And the second one is inside components video.js. I'll show you what these are. So the incall.js file contains mainly the UI of this application. So for example, these buttons that you see here are defined in the incall.js. Let's look instead at the video.js file that you find above. And this contains the actual logic to connect to the video rooms. So inside this video.js, we are going to actually use the SignalWire SDK. Okay, and that's where we are going to start from. So again, I strongly suggest that you write with me the code, that you try to follow along, or that you copy paste the code into the application from the gist, because at the end, we will try to get all together in this room. So if you've been able to follow along, we'll meet in this room at the end. Okay, so let's all go inside the video.js file. I will resize this window here. So as I was saying, in this file, we are going to actually connect the video to SignalWire. So what are we going to do? First, we are going to import the SignalWire SDK. During this hands-on, you will see a lot of comments like to do, like this one. And this is where we are going to fill in the missing code. Okay. So to import the SignalWire SDK, we have installed the SDK for you in this space. So we just have to import it. And we can import everything as SignalWire from SignalWire.js. Okay, this is at line 6 of video.js. And you will find the gist for this in the chat. Okay. So now that we have imported the SDK, we can look below and we see a variable which is called server location. Don't touch this, but this is just the URL of the server. So this is the server that we have just written, okay, a few moments ago. This is where we will make a request to obtain a token, a room token. Let's go down and we see that we have a video component. This is a React component, but as I said, don't worry if you don't know React. It's not really needed. But just to give you an idea, this component takes as parameters the details of the room that we want to join, so the name of the room, the name of the user, and whether it should be a moderator or not. Then some callbacks, don't worry about those. Let's go down until we see another to-do. On line about 40, 38, 40. So we are setting up the room. Remember, what we need to do is obtain a room token. And we wrote a few moments ago a server to do that. So what we are going to do now is to make a request to our own server to get this token. So let's write this code. We can say that token equals to, again, we can use Axios to make network requests. Axios.post where. So server location was the variable, remember, that is defined above with the URL of our server. And we need to go to the get token endpoint. Okay. And there are a few parameters that we need to pass. If you remember, we had a username. And here we have a username as a parameter here of the room. So we can pass just that. Room details dot name. And what we have is the name of a room. Room details dot room. And whether we are moderator or not, room details dot mod. Again, find the gist for this in the chat. Let's add the last line to extract this token from the envelope of Axios. So token equals token.data. Token, whoops, I've forgotten a wait here. So since this is an asynchronous call, we have to await for the underlying promise to be resolved. So sorry for that. Okay. We have the token. We have obtained a token, which is, again, think of this as a key to access a given room. This moderator field basically controls the permissions that we assign to the token. Remember the permissions that the list of strings that was in the backend. This basically controls whether we get a list of moderator permissions or normal user permissions. We can go down to the second to-do, well, to-do number 2 at line about 49. So now that we have the key, the token, we need to access the room to obtain a reference to this room. And now this is where we are actually going to use the SDK for the first time. Remember, we imported it as SignalWire, as a name SignalWire. So what we are going to do now, we're going to say room equals, we await the asynchronous request, SignalWire dot video dot create room objects. This is the method that you call to obtain a reference to a room. And what we pass to this method is the token that we obtain above. Plus it's the ID of an element in the DOM, which will show the video. So this is like this. Root element ID temp. So just to be clear, this is the ID of an HTML element. So if you go down, you will see that we have in our here, we have a div with ID temp. This is the HTML element where the video will show. Okay, let's go back. And as a final parameters, let's pass video through to get the default constraints for the video device that we are going to use on our computer. So this is how you get a reference to the room using the token that gives us access to the room. As usual, find the link, the gist for this snippet of code in the chat, and if you want, you can copy paste it into the application. Okay, now we need to go down a little bit, and here we have prepared some function for you because it's boring. So we're just going to uncomment this function call here. What this does is basically connecting some events. So we need to call some callbacks when, for example, a new member joins the room, a member leaves the room, all stuff that is really needed just for updating the UI, really. Okay, so we don't worry about that so much, just uncomment the code. Then number 4, finally, we're going to actually join the room. So up until now, we have obtained a reference to the room. We have connected the event handlers, but we didn't join yet. We are going to join now. And to do that, it's just a single line of code. And we write await room dot. To answer the question in the chat, yes, this is not implemented in this demo, but yes, there is a way to recognize when who is speaking in the room. It's just some additional events that you can subscribe to. So we have joined the room now. After we do that, the video stream will start. Okay, find the gist for this in the chat. I see Cassie already shared that, and if you want, copy it into your application. Final touch. Again, this is mainly related to the UI. We can uncomment this piece of code here. So okay. This is basically taking, for example, the list of cameras that are available on your device, list of microphone, list of speakers, and additionally, the list of layouts. We'll see later why this is interesting, but basically your room can have different layouts. As Brett was explaining to you before, in SignalWire, the video is rendered in the cloud, so everyone sees the same thing. And that's why you can choose different layouts for a room. Okay, we call some events, and then step 6, again, just uncomment this. This is another function that we wrote to connect the event handlers for when, for example, your devices change. Let's say you connect a new microphone, you will get your code will get notified, and you can add that to the UI. Okay, so now we have basically everything we need for the core functionalities of this application. Let me save this. Let me refresh this window here. And if you want, you can try with me, and let's see if it works. So I will enter a name for me. Daniel. Name of a room, let's say SignalWire. Okay. And I will join this room. It may take a few moments because our server, the server that we wrote is written in code sandbox, so there is a slight delay for that. But here we are, so it worked. And now you may think this is all done, but actually you may notice that, for example, the mute video button doesn't work, doesn't do anything. Or the screen share button doesn't do anything. And that's what we're going to implement in a moment. Okay, so I will leave this open so that we can, I hope it works, but we can try to see in real time. I'm not sure if Code Sandbox will be able to follow along instead of refreshing the whole page, but we'll try to see in real time the changes that we do this time. Okay, so let me resize this window here. Yeah, this should be good. Yeah, have you been able to build this core functionality? Follow along. Don't worry if you haven't been, because you will find the code at the end. So now we're going to implement the functionalities for the buttons. So let's go in the page, in the code page, which is actually responsible for the UI. And this is, again, you find it in source pages in code.js. So let's open this new file. All right. So let's start from, for example, this mute video button. How do we implement video muting with SignalWire SDK? So let's go down in this file. We'll search the point when this button is defined, okay? And you can look for this comment here to do a mute video, or just go to line 152. So this is a split button menu. Don't worry about that. It's just a button that has two states, basically. And if it is enabled, we are going to do something. If it is disabled, we are going to do something else. In this case, if it is enabled, we are going to mute the video. Otherwise, we are going to unmute it. So in this page, we have a reference to the room handle that we obtain in video.js. Remember when we wrote the create room object method, the first method call using the SDK. We have the reference to that room object here inside this file too, and it's called room. So to mute the video, we're going to do this. We're going to await room dot video mute. Yeah, really, it's that easy. That's just a one line. And to unmute the video again, you guessed it, this time is room dot video unmute. All right, shall we try it? Let's try it. And it works. So now I'm muted, and now I'm unmuted. Find the link for this in the chat as usual. So if you want, you can copy paste it into the code. And what we are going to see next is the layout functionality. So this selector that you see here allows you to select one of different layouts for a room. So you're not going to see the menu while I open this for reasons, but for example, now I'm selecting an 8x8 layout, it doesn't do anything because it's not implemented yet, but we're going to do that in a moment. So let's go down, let's find where this selector is defined, and it's defined on line 226. So here we have this event handler on change, which gives us the name of the layout that the user has selected. So what we can do here is just ask SignalWire to set this layout for the room. And we can do that like this. So as usual, we are doing asynchronous calls, so we await a lot of things, and we do await room dot set layout. We pass name of the layout, which we have in the value parameter. Okay. Let me save. All right. Now, if I go here and I try to change layout, for example, let's set 8 times 8, and I become tiny because now the layout is a grid of 8 times 8 members. Okay, let's go back to 2 times 1, for example. Okay. So the snippets for this should already be in the chat. Yeah, I see it. And we have our last feature, which is screen sharing. So to implement screen sharing, let's go down again, line 245. And so screen sharing sounds complicated, but really, as usual with this SDK, is just a matter of a line of code, basically. What we're going to do is to call this method here from the SDK. So await room as usual dot create share. Okay, and this method this time returns an object. Returns the object which represents the current screen sharing. So we're going to save this object inside the sc variable. So sc equal await room.create screen share object. Don't worry about this line. This is just for the UI as usual. So this is just what is needed to start a screen sharing, and we'll try it in a moment. To stop the screen sharing, it's as easy. So we have the screen share object, which is called screen share object. This is the same as SC, just with a different name because React reasons. So screen share object dot leave. This is always needed to leave the screen sharing. And I'll show you in a moment. So I'm going to save this file. I'm going to click on the screen sharing button. Let's select a window, for example, this one. And here we are. So I'm sharing my screen inside the room. Let's turn off screen sharing to see if it works. And it does. Okay. So how many of you have been able to follow along? Please write in the chat if you've been able to complete some part of this. So you can, now that we have built this, you can even try to invite a friend into this room. For example, you can click on this button here, you find some links. You can use this to invite a friend in the room. Or if you want, you can take a look at our developer portal where we have a write-up for this application, where we also go more in depth to show you, for example, how to implement recording. So you can record the room with an API which is just as easy to use, or overlays, so you can show you can update the UI to show what is in this square, for example, or how to change rooms or stuff like that. Okay, so that's it. Brett, want to say a few more words?
All right, thanks, Daniela. So a couple last things to end this section of today's LiveWire. We, like promised, we will have the slide deck at the end here. The appendix has a whole bunch of useful links that I hope you take a look at. Daniela mentioned a couple of these: the developer documentation, our portal that is our one-stop shop for all of our code snippets, guides, things of that nature. A little bit more information about the video API, and then the first demonstration we did on it a few months back, as well as a link where you can sign up to create a SignalWire space and retrieve those credentials that we've been talking about this entire time. And then also a link to all the different code snippets and everything that we used throughout this workshop itself. If you have any questions after everything is said and done and we leave this workshop today, you can always email our sales department at sales@signalwire.com to talk to them, or you can join our Slack community channel. There we have different channels relating to all sorts of different SignalWire products where you can ask questions, get those questions answered by our 80+ SignalWire employees, as well as other SignalWire customers like yourselves. And what that enables you to do is it enables all of us to learn together as people ask questions in an open forum and get answers in that same open forum. We can kind of grow and learn together and see some pretty cool use cases and kind of help each other out a little bit. But that being said, are we doing the photo thing for this one, Daniela?
Well, if someone has been able to, if someone wants to join this room, please do it now. The room that we have built.
All right, you guys. So thank you so much for doing that. It's also just really cool to be able to experience this, and everybody be able to join that same video application, kind of experience the fruits of our labor as developers a little bit. And it's always really, really satisfying when you're able to pump out that code and it actually worked. So we're really excited that we had the opportunity to introduce this to you all today and kind of play around with it together. But as promised, I did want to open up the floor a little bit to a Q&A session. That being said, we will take questions in the chat. If you want to, come up and talk and speak on video, I should say, is probably a more accurate way of saying it. There's a little hand icon to the bottom of your screen. That is our raise hand button, and it highlights your window in green so that we can see you. However you would prefer to ask the questions. And I'll leave the floor open. Looks like we have one here. And John, did you have a question?
Yes, hi. I noticed a thing happening where the audio would cut out, and I'd started to time it. It seemed to be every 30 to 45 seconds, and it was only for a fraction of a second, but it made kind of a little stutter out of things. And I didn't know whether that was something performance related, or what it's having to do bandwidth and mux wise, or was it, is it just me?
As far as the video API is concerned, more than likely it is partially bandwidth and also partially the fact that this application was written in Code Sandbox, which allocates a good amount of bandwidth and able to create an application like this. Code Sandbox is the best way to illustrate what we're trying to do for the purposes of demonstrations and workshops. Wouldn't necessarily recommend keeping the application hosted on it for a long-term solution.
And you're referring to the middle of the three tiers, the kind of what's happening in that, right?
Right.
The client's server, the customer's server, right? Okay, got it.
Exactly. It's all in the server side where that little hiccup happened. And simply just because Code Sandbox takes a slight delay and sometimes it needs to catch up and communicate with the API itself.
Just check if you were aware of it. And
if
it's just that,
Absolutely. Any other questions? I'm trying to see anything in the chat, any hands being raised. Is there a limit to the number? Oh, just changed. Is there a limit to the number of users that can join a particular room at a time? We have tested a lot and kind of put this thing to the stress test. And so far, you can put a good amount of people into it. As far as a maximum, I do not know what the max is there. We've been able to put a couple hundred in a time without any problem, though. And we have a couple others. John, I'll get to you in a second, but we have another hand raised as well. Just wanted to acknowledge it and tried to get a name on it. Jeff, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I know this goes a little further in depth, but and I'll read the API a little more in depth later, but I have a use case scenario for this kind of simple, video chat, very, very quick and elegant, of course, bootstrapping this thing together. Is it possible to maybe tap the audio, through the API? Maybe I have a Docker session running I guess what am I trying to do? I want to take the audio, basically try and close caption it, and be able to. I don't know if we can send that out, but I could probably use JavaScript depending on which channel is detecting the sound, and then have it decrypt the voice in real time, and then send it up to, obviously my script that would then overlay it on top of whatever image it is.
That's a very interesting use case, honestly. I'm going to be straight up. I've never attempted to do anything like that, so I'm not 100% certain. However, we are always looking to, talk to our customers a little bit more about specific use cases like this and ways we can kind of build this out to support you all. Can we follow up with our product marketing team after this and discuss your use case a little bit more?
Absolutely, but in general, basically, as one general one, as we unite more and more people, trying to be, although I'm sure it doesn't work very well, but trying to do something like Teams where if I speak a different language, whatever language is detected will then automatically start translating that and putting it on the words, in which case then we're all unified.
Yeah. I mean, there are a variety of APIs out there. The direct translation, speech to text in and of itself might be something we can accomplish.
And that would be, that would be the first step, is obviously, can we have another channel for a process rather than a, what do you call it, a participant that sits there, and then can it identify the channel that is being spoken to? That's why I was asking before, is this P2P after the video API, or is this actually going through a media server? In which case, then you could tap right there, just like standard SIP.
Right. The way the video API itself connects is through what's called an MCU. So essentially in its own cloud-based media server, in a sense. So it's not directly P2P.
So that's perfect.
Highly possible.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No worries. And overall, and just to kind of refer to what Cassie's saying in the chat about that as well, the API for TAP is coming pretty quickly too. And John, did you have another question?
I did, actually, related sort of to the last one, because I'm also interested in that, is although things are getting kind of multiplexed together or something, is there some kind of retaining of the like the who said what, so that if you wanted to get at what was the audio signal of speaker 1 versus speaker 2, that you'd be able to get at that information?
Daniela, do you want to take that one?
And it sounds like Satyak is ready with a question. I've gone twice and somebody's in the chat.
No worries.
Yeah, sorry, I lost the first part of your question. So
But
you were
audio,
talking about speakers?
Do you keep track of, if you have 10 people on the call and it's all getting put together on the server, but then sent back out to everyone, can I, through the API, kind of still be able to tell that this thing was said by speaker 1 and that thing was said by speaker 3?
So for the audio, I'm not sure. We have something like that for video. So you have something called overlays that allow you to know what is in which parts of the video stream. I'm not sure about audio.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll need to
Hugely
look at that.
important for us. So just so you know.
All right, so .NET integration. There are plans for a .NET integration of the video API itself. I don't know how far along we are, but it is 100% on the roadmap. All right. No worries, Andy. Let's see. I'll give it just one more moment.
Wait, Jeff, about highlighting the video of the person speaking, yeah, you can do that. You can detect who is speaking. So that's something that can be done for sure.
I think that was kind of an answer to the other gentleman's question, being able to detect which speaker is speaking by audio level. I'm assuming that's what he was asking. So it would be kind of that thing of somewhat highlighting the video window that is actually speaking.
Yes, you can definitely do that.
All right, we'll just give it one more moment. We have hit like our kind of promise, build the Zoom clone in 60 minutes. So, thank you all for joining us. We'll still hang around for a little bit. If you have any other questions or anything relating to the video API itself. But yeah, thank you so much for spending this time with us and introducing all this. And we will see you next time.